Question 1. Process analysis reveals that a subset of users are experiencing inconsistent desktop behavior in their VMware Horizon 8 X environment, with some users reporting missing application shortcuts and others experiencing slow application launches, despite all users being assigned to the same desktop pool. What is the most effective approach to diagnose and resolve these inconsistencies? Option A. Verify the Horizon Agent version and its compatibility with the Horizon Connection Server. Ensure relevant agent features are enabled on the golden image, and validate user profile management configurations for consistency. Option B. Focus solely on optimizing the network latency to the virtual desktops, assuming that is the primary cause of application launch delays. Option C. Immediately reprovision all affected virtual desktops from the golden image to ensure a clean state for all users. Option D. Randomly update the Horizon agent and other related components on the golden image and test the environment after each update. Correct answer is A. Verify the Horizon agent version and its compatibility with the Horizon Connection Server. Ensure relevant agent features are enabled on the golden image, and validate user profile management configurations for consistency. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure management, ensuring consistent and secure user experiences while adhering to evolving security policies. The professional must balance the immediate need for user access with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities and compliance requirements. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the inconsistent behavior and implementing a solution that is both effective and compliant with VMware Horizon 8 X best practices and any applicable regulatory frameworks, though for this exam, we focus solely on the technical and best practice aspects as defined by VMware for Horizon 8 X. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation of the Horizon 8 X environment, focusing on the specific components that deliver the virtual desktop experience. This includes examining the Horizon agent installation on the golden image, the pool configuration, and the user profile management solution. By verifying the Horizon agent version and its compatibility with the Horizon Connection Server, and ensuring the correct agent features are enabled for the intended user experience, e.g., Unity Touch, Horizon Smart Policies, the administrator addresses potential configuration drift or outdated components. Furthermore, validating the user profile management settings ensures that user data and settings are applied consistently across sessions, mitigating the observed inconsistencies. This methodical approach aligns with VMware's recommended troubleshooting and best practices for Horizon 8 X, aiming for stability, security, and optimal performance. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that solely focuses on reprovisioning desktops without understanding the underlying cause is inefficient and potentially masks deeper issues. It fails to address the root cause of the inconsistency, leading to recurring problems and wasted resources. This is professionally unsound as it bypasses proper diagnostic procedures. An approach that involves randomly updating components without a clear understanding of their impact or dependencies is highly risky. It can introduce new incompatibilities, destabilize the environment, and violate the principle of change management, which is crucial for maintaining a secure and reliable infrastructure. This approach lacks a structured, evidence-based decision-making process, an approach that ignores user profile management and focuses only on the desktop image, assumes the issue is solely with the OS or Horizon agent, neglecting a significant factor in user experience consistency. User profile issues are a common source of perceived desktop inconsistencies and must be investigated as part of a comprehensive troubleshooting effort. This approach demonstrates incomplete analysis. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering information, forming hypotheses, testing hypotheses systematically, and implementing solutions based on evidence. In a VMware Horizon 8 X environment, this means leveraging Horizon's built-in tools and logs, understanding the interplay between the connection server, agents, and client devices, and considering all potential points of failure, including image configuration, agent settings, and user profile management. Adherence to VMware's official documentation and best practices is paramount for ensuring a stable, secure, and compliant virtual desktop infrastructure. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that streamlining user onboarding and offboarding processes in VMware Horizon 8 X could significantly reduce administrative overhead. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance while achieving these efficiency gains? Option A. Modify existing user access policies to grant broader permissions during the onboarding phase to expedite setup, with a plan to refine them post-deployment. Option B. Prioritize the speed of onboarding and offboarding automation to realize immediate efficiency benefits, deferring detailed security and compliance checks to a later, unspecified date. Option C. Implement automated user lifecycle management without a specific review of security configurations, assuming existing policies are adequate for regulatory adherence. Option D. Automate user provisioning and deprovisioning workflows, ensuring that all security configurations and audit logging mechanisms are retained and validated against regulatory requirements before deployment. The correct answer is D. Automate user provisioning and deprovisioning workflows, ensuring that all security configurations and audit logging mechanisms are retained and validated against regulatory requirements before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge stemming from the need to balance operational efficiency gains with the stringent regulatory requirements of data privacy and security within a VMware Horizon 8 X environment. The efficiency study highlights a potential conflict between streamlining user access and the imperative to maintain robust audit trails and access controls, which are critical for compliance. Professionals must navigate this by ensuring that any proposed efficiency measures do not inadvertently compromise regulatory adherence, particularly concerning data protection and user accountability. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific regulatory framework relevant to the exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be a general IT professional context without a specific country mandated, thus focusing on common best practices and principles often reflected in IT regulations, to the technical implementation of Horizon 8 X. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed efficiency measures against the established regulatory framework governing data handling and user access. This includes verifying that any changes to user provisioning or session management do not bypass or weaken existing security controls, such as multi-factor authentication, granular access policies, or session recording capabilities where mandated. Professional practice here is to prioritize compliance by ensuring that all efficiency improvements are implemented in a manner that maintains or enhances the integrity of audit logs, data segregation, and user authentication mechanisms. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, ensuring that regulatory requirements are embedded into the technical solution from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. The focus is on demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to regulatory adherence, which is paramount in professional IT practice. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing efficiency measures without a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks creating vulnerabilities that could lead to data breaches, unauthorized access, or noncompliance with data protection laws. For instance, automating user deprovisioning without ensuring that all associated data and access rights are properly revoked according to regulatory timelines could result in persistent unauthorized access or data retention violations. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of implementation over thorough testing of security and compliance implications. This can lead to unintended consequences, such as weakening encryption standards or compromising the immutability of audit logs, both of which are common regulatory requirements. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for the potential harm to individuals whose data is being processed. Finally, assuming that existing security configurations are sufficient without reevaluation after efficiency changes is also a failure. Regulations often require periodic reviews and updates to security postures. Ignoring this due diligence can lead to a drift from compliance, even if the initial setup was compliant. This reflects a reactive rather than proactive approach to regulatory management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory framework. Before implementing any changes, a thorough impact assessment should be conducted, specifically evaluating how the proposed changes affect data privacy, security controls, and auditability. This involves consulting with compliance officers or legal counsel if necessary. The decision-making process should then involve weighing the potential efficiency gains against the identified risks and ensuring that mitigation strategies are in place to address any compliance gaps. Documentation of this process, including the rationale for decisions and any implemented controls, is crucial for demonstrating accountability and adherence to best practices. Question 3. During the evaluation of a new VMware Horizon 8 X deployment, what is the most critical factor to consider when designing and implementing security controls to ensure regulatory compliance? Option A. The latest industry-standard security best practices for virtual desktop infrastructure, irrespective of specific regulatory requirements. Option B. The cost-effectiveness of security solutions, prioritizing the least expensive options that offer basic protection. Option C. The technical capabilities of the Horizon 8 X platform to implement advanced security features without explicit consideration of regulatory mandates. Option D. The specific data privacy and protection regulations applicable to the organization's industry and geographic location, and how Horizon 8 X features can be configured to meet these mandates. The correct answer is D. The specific data privacy and protection regulations applicable to the organization's industry and geographic location, and how Horizon 8 X features can be configured to meet these mandates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the technical requirements of a VMware Horizon 8 X deployment with the stringent regulatory compliance obligations that govern data handling and access. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen security measures for Horizon 8 X are not only effective from a technical standpoint, but also demonstrably compliant with the specific regulatory framework applicable to the organization's operations. This requires a deep understanding of both the technology and the legal/regulatory landscape, demanding careful judgment to avoid both security vulnerabilities and compliance breaches. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive, risk-based methodology aligned with regulatory mandates. By engaging legal and compliance teams early, the organization ensures that the security controls implemented within Horizon 8 X are designed with compliance as a foundational element rather than an afterthought. This aligns with principles of data privacy and security by design, which are increasingly emphasized in regulatory frameworks. Specifically, this approach facilitates adherence to regulations that mandate data protection, auditability, and access controls, ensuring that the Horizon environment can withstand scrutiny and demonstrate compliance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical implementation without considering regulatory implications fails to meet professional standards. Such an approach risks implementing security measures that, while technically sound, may not satisfy specific regulatory requirements for data segregation, logging, or user access. This could lead to significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust. For instance, a failure to implement granular access controls as mandated by certain data protection laws would be a direct regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost-effectiveness over compliance is equally problematic. While budget considerations are important, they must not supersede legal and regulatory obligations. Implementing security features that are cheaper but do not meet compliance standards is a direct violation of professional duty and regulatory requirements. This can result in a false sense of security while leaving the organization exposed to significant legal and financial repercussions. A further incorrect approach that relies on outdated or generic security best practices without verifying their alignment with current, specific regulatory requirements is also unacceptable. Regulatory landscapes evolve, and what was once considered compliant may no longer be. Professionals have a duty to stay abreast of relevant regulations and ensure that their technical implementations are current and specifically address the mandates in force. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly identify all applicable regulatory frameworks. Second, conduct a thorough risk assessment that considers both technical vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. Third, engage relevant stakeholders, including legal, compliance, and security teams, from the outset of any project. Fourth, Design and implement solutions that integrate security and compliance requirements from the ground up. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure sustained compliance and adapt to evolving regulatory demands. Question 4. The performance metrics show a consistent pattern of high latency and intermittent availability for a critical virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) environment managed by VMware Horizon 8. X. What is the most appropriate initial course of action to address this issue while adhering to professional best practices for IT service management? Option A. Advise end users to restart their virtual desktops frequently to mitigate the performance issues. Option B. Deploy a third-party performance monitoring tool to gain deeper insights into the VDI environment's bottlenecks. Option C. Immediately begin a comprehensive review of the Horizon 8 X infrastructure, including connection servers, UAG, agents, and underlying compute and storage resources, documenting all findings and potential causes. Option D. Focus solely on network troubleshooting, assuming the VDI environment itself is functioning correctly. The correct answer is C. Immediately begin a comprehensive review of the Horizon 8 X infrastructure, including connection servers, UAG, agents, and underlying compute and storage resources, documenting all findings and potential causes. Explanation. The performance metrics show a consistent pattern of high latency and intermittent availability for a critical virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) environment managed by VMware Horizon 8 X. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts end-user productivity and business operations. The IT administrator must not only troubleshoot the technical issue, but also ensure that any remediation actions comply with the organization's internal policies and any relevant industry-specific regulations concerning data access and service availability. The urgency of the situation can tempt a quick fix, but a methodical, compliant approach is paramount. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation of the Horizon 8 X environment, including the underlying infrastructure, network, and Horizon components, while meticulously documenting all findings and actions. This aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing a thorough root cause analysis before implementing solutions. It also implicitly adheres to regulatory frameworks that often require auditable logs of system changes and incident response, ensuring accountability and transparency. For example, if the organization operates under regulations like GDPR or HIPAA, though not explicitly stated for this exam, the principles of data protection and service continuity are universal in professional IT. Maintaining detailed records of system performance and troubleshooting is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and compliance. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement unverified configuration changes or deploy third-party tools without proper testing or understanding of their impact on the Horizon environment. This could lead to further instability, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities, directly violating principles of responsible system management and potentially contravening regulatory requirements for data integrity and security. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are transient, and delay investigation. This failure to act promptly in the face of a critical service degradation could lead to significant business disruption and, in regulated industries, could be interpreted as a failure to maintain adequate service levels and security, potentially incurring penalties. A third incorrect approach might be to blame external factors without conducting internal diagnostics, which bypasses the administrator's responsibility to manage and secure the deployed Horizon environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope and impact of the issue, followed by a structured troubleshooting methodology. This involves consulting official VMware documentation, utilizing Horizon's built-in monitoring tools, and engaging with relevant teams, network, storage, security. All actions should be logged, and any proposed changes should be risk-assessed, and where possible, tested in a non-production environment. The ultimate goal is to restore service while ensuring the integrity, security, and compliance of the VDI environment. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual data access requests originating from several virtual desktops, raising concerns about potential unauthorized access to sensitive corporate information. Which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practices for addressing this situation? Option A. Conduct a cursory review of the monitoring logs to identify the specific user accounts involved, and then implement a password reset policy for those accounts only. Option B. Immediately revoke access for all users associated with the identified virtual desktops and initiate a full system audit to identify the source and scope of the unauthorized access, while documenting all investigative steps and findings. Option C. Disable all network connectivity for the affected virtual desktops and wait for user complaints before investigating the cause of the access pattern. Option D. Ignore the monitoring alerts as they are likely to be false positives and continue with normal operations to avoid unnecessary disruption. The correct answer is B. Immediately revoke access for all users associated with the identified virtual desktops and initiate a full system audit to identify the source and scope of the unauthorized access, while documenting all investigative steps and findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure management, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations while maintaining operational efficiency. The monitoring system's output, indicating potential unauthorized access to sensitive data, requires a nuanced response that balances security imperatives with the rights of users and the organization's legal obligations. The professional challenge lies in interpreting the monitoring data accurately, determining the scope and severity of the potential breach, and implementing corrective actions that are both effective and compliant with relevant regulations, without causing undue disruption or infringing on user privacy. The need for swift action must be tempered by a methodical approach to investigation and remediation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes immediate containment, thorough investigation, and transparent communication, all within the bounds of applicable regulations. This begins with isolating the affected virtual desktops or user accounts to prevent further unauthorized access. Standard security practice. Simultaneously, a detailed forensic analysis of the monitoring logs and system activity is crucial to ascertain the nature, extent, and origin of the potential unauthorized access. This investigation must be conducted in a manner that respects data privacy principles, collecting only the data necessary for the investigation and adhering to data minimization principles. Based on the findings, a risk assessment is performed to determine the potential impact on sensitive data and affected individuals. Remediation steps such as revoking access, strengthening security controls, and potentially notifying affected parties are then implemented. Throughout this process, adherence to data protection laws, such as those governing the handling of personal data and breach notification requirements, is paramount. This approach represents best professional practice because it is proactive, evidence-based, and legally sound, minimizing both security risks and regulatory penalties. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately disabling all user accounts and suspending all virtual desktop access without a thorough investigation. This is a regulatory failure because it constitutes an overly broad and potentially discriminatory action that infringes on user rights and may violate principles of proportionality and necessity. It fails to distinguish between legitimate and unauthorized activity and can lead to significant operational disruption and reputational damage. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in investigating the root cause before implementing drastic measures. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the monitoring alerts, assuming they are false positives, and take no immediate action. This is a severe regulatory failure, as it demonstrates a disregard for potential data breaches and a failure to implement adequate security controls as mandated by data protection laws. It exposes the organization to significant legal liabilities, fines, and reputational harm. Ethically, it represents negligence and a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect sensitive data and user information. A third incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial review of the logs, focusing only on identifying the user involved without examining the broader system context or potential vulnerabilities. This is a regulatory failure because it may not uncover the full scope of the breach or the underlying security weaknesses, leading to incomplete remediation and a higher risk of future incidents. It also fails to adequately address the organization's obligation to protect data and inform affected individuals if necessary. Ethically, it represents a lack of thoroughness and a failure to exercise professional diligence in safeguarding sensitive information. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such a scenario should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, acknowledge the alert and initiate a preliminary assessment to understand the potential severity. Second, activate the incident response plan, which should clearly define roles, responsibilities, and escalation procedures. Third, prioritize containment and investigation, ensuring that all actions taken are documented and comply with relevant data protection regulations. Fourth, conduct a thorough risk assessment to determine the impact and necessary remediation steps. Fifth, communicate findings and actions to relevant stakeholders, including legal and compliance teams, and affected individuals if required by law. Finally, review and update security policies and procedures based on lessons learned to prevent recurrence. This systematic approach ensures that security incidents are managed effectively, legally, and ethically. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates that a VMware Horizon 8 X environment is experiencing an increase in reported security incidents, including unauthorized access attempts and occasional data exfiltration. The IT security team is tasked with developing a comprehensive risk assessment strategy to address these issues and enhance the overall security posture of the VDI. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory expectations for managing risks in this environment? Option A. Prioritize user convenience and accessibility by disabling most security logging and auditing features to reduce system overhead and improve end-user experience, while addressing security incidents reactively as they occur. Option B. Immediately implement stringent, blanket access restrictions for all users across the Horizon environment to prevent any further unauthorized access, without a detailed analysis of specific user roles or business needs. Option C. Focus exclusively on deploying advanced intrusion detection systems and firewalls, assuming that technical defenses alone will adequately mitigate all identified security risks. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities, evaluates their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes the implementation of appropriate security controls, including regular patching, access control reviews, and user security awareness training. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities, evaluates their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes the implementation of appropriate security controls, including regular patching, access control reviews, and user security awareness training. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between implementing robust security measures for a virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, and ensuring user productivity and accessibility. The need to comply with VMware Horizon 8 X professional best practices, as outlined in the 2V0-51-23 exam syllabus, requires a balanced approach that prioritizes risk mitigation without unduly hindering business operations. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and addressing potential vulnerabilities in the Horizon environment that could be exploited, while also considering the impact on end users. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified risks through a structured and comprehensive risk assessment process. This involves not only identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, but also evaluating their likelihood and impact. Implementing controls such as regular security patching, access control reviews, and user awareness training are all critical components of a proactive security posture, directly aligning with the principles of risk management and the security requirements for a Horizon 8 X environment. This approach ensures that security measures are proportionate to the identified risks and are integrated into the operational lifecycle of the VDI. Each incorrect approach represents a specific regulatory or ethical failure, focusing solely on technical controls without considering user impact or operational context, leads to an unbalanced and potentially ineffective security strategy. For instance, implementing overly restrictive access controls without proper justification can violate principles of least privilege and hinder legitimate business functions, potentially leading to user frustration and workarounds that introduce new security risks. Conversely, prioritizing user convenience over security by neglecting essential updates or access reviews creates significant vulnerabilities that could lead to data breaches or service disruption, failing to meet the duty of care expected in managing sensitive IT infrastructure. Ignoring the potential for insider threats or social engineering attacks by focusing only on external threats is also a critical oversight, as internal risks can be equally damaging. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying all potential assets and threats within the Horizon environment. Next, vulnerabilities associated with these assets and threats must be identified. The likelihood and impact of each identified risk should then be evaluated to prioritize mitigation efforts. Finally, appropriate controls should be selected and implemented, with ongoing monitoring and review to ensure their effectiveness and adapt to evolving threats. This iterative process ensures that security measures are aligned with business objectives and regulatory requirements, fostering a secure and productive VDI environment. Question 7. The evaluation methodology shows that a new deployment of VMware Horizon 8 X for a financial services organization within the specified exam jurisdiction must meet stringent data residency and audit trail requirements. Which of the following deployment strategies best ensures adherence to these regulatory mandates? Option A. Implementing Horizon 8 X with all data stored and processed within the organization's on-premises data centers, coupled with a comprehensive logging configuration that captures all user actions and system events, and retaining these logs for the legally mandated period. Option B. Deploying Horizon 8 X using a cloud-based infrastructure where data residency is not explicitly controlled, and relying on the cloud provider's general security assurances without specific audit trail configuration beyond default settings. Option C. Prioritizing rapid deployment and user experience by enabling all Horizon 8 X features without a detailed review of their impact on data residency or the completeness of audit trails, assuming standard configurations are sufficient. Option D. Configuring Horizon 8 X to utilize a hybrid cloud model where some user data resides in the cloud and some on-premises, with minimal emphasis on granular logging to reduce storage overhead. The correct answer is A. Implementing Horizon 8 X with all data stored and processed within the organization's on-premises data centers, coupled with a comprehensive logging configuration that captures all user actions and system events, and retaining these logs for the legally mandated period. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical need to ensure that the deployment of VMware Horizon 8 X adheres to the specific regulatory compliance requirements mandated by the exam's jurisdiction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of how technical configurations directly impact regulatory adherence, moving beyond mere functionality to encompass legal and ethical obligations. The pressure to deliver a functional virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) solution can sometimes overshadow the meticulous attention needed for compliance, leading to potential breaches. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive and documented strategy for regulatory compliance. This involves integrating compliance checks into the design and implementation phases, ensuring that all configurations, data handling, and access controls align with the specific regulations. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of costly remediation, reputational damage, and legal penalties. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible technology deployment and data stewardship, which are paramount in regulated environments. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical performance without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence regarding the specific legal and ethical obligations of the organization. For instance, implementing default security settings that do not meet data privacy requirements, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the exam's jurisdiction, or equivalent local data protection laws, would be a significant regulatory failure. Another failure would be neglecting to document compliance measures, making it impossible to demonstrate adherence during an audit. Furthermore, assuming that standard Horizon features automatically satisfy all regulatory needs without explicit verification is a critical oversight. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly identify all applicable regulatory frameworks relevant to the exam's jurisdiction and the specific industry of the deployment. Second, map these regulatory requirements to specific VMware Horizon 8 X features and configurations. Third, design and implement the VDI solution with these mapped requirements as non-negotiable criteria. Fourth, establish a robust testing and auditing process to continuously verify compliance. Finally, maintain comprehensive documentation of all compliance-related decisions, configurations, and testing results. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals a newly identified critical vulnerability in a core component of the VMware Horizon 8 X infrastructure with public exploit information available. What is the most appropriate initial step to manage this risk effectively? Option A. Focus solely on the technical severity rating of the vulnerability when deciding on the urgency of remediation. Option B. Immediately deploy the vendor-provided patch to all production Horizon 8 X servers to eliminate the vulnerability as quickly as possible. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the potential business impact and prioritize remediation based on the likelihood of exploitation and the criticality of affected systems. Option D. Monitor network traffic for any signs of exploitation attempts before taking any action. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the potential business impact and prioritize remediation based on the likelihood of exploitation and the criticality of affected systems. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT risk management or a newly identified vulnerability in a widely used component of VMware Horizon 8 X requires immediate attention. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching with the potential for disruption to critical business operations. A hasty or poorly planned remediation could lead to downtime, data loss, or performance degradation, impacting user productivity and potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs. The professional must therefore conduct a thorough risk assessment to prioritize remediation efforts effectively, considering the likelihood and impact of the vulnerability being exploited versus the impact of the remediation itself. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment process. This begins with identifying the specific vulnerability and its potential impact on the Horizon 8 X environment. Next, it requires evaluating the likelihood of exploitation, considering factors like public exploit availability and the organization's security posture. Based on this, the potential business impact, e.g., data breach, service disruption, reputational damage, is assessed. This allows for the prioritization of remediation actions, such as applying vendor patches, implementing compensating controls, or developing a rollback plan. This methodical approach ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to address the most critical risks first, aligning with best practices for IT security and operational continuity. It also supports compliance with general IT governance principles that mandate proactive risk management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately deploy the patch across all production systems without prior testing. This bypasses the crucial step of assessing the patch's impact on the existing environment. Such an action could lead to unforeseen compatibility issues, system instability, or outright failure, directly violating the principle of maintaining operational integrity and potentially breaching SLAs. It also fails to consider the risk of the remediation itself causing harm, which is a fundamental aspect of risk assessment. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the vulnerability because no active exploitation has been observed within the organization. This reactive stance is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Organizations have a duty to proactively manage known risks, especially those with publicly disclosed vulnerabilities that could be exploited by external actors. Waiting for an incident to occur is a dereliction of duty and exposes the organization to severe consequences, including regulatory penalties for inadequate security controls and potential legal liabilities. A third incorrect approach is to only consider the technical severity of the vulnerability without assessing its business impact. While technical severity is important, it does not tell the whole story. A technically severe vulnerability in a non-critical system might pose less immediate risk than a moderately severe vulnerability in a system handling sensitive customer data or core business processes. Failing to link technical risks to business impact means that remediation efforts might be misdirected, leaving more critical areas exposed. This demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and a failure to align IT security with business objectives, which is a cornerstone of effective governance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured risk assessment framework. This involves 1. Threat identification, understanding the nature and scope of the vulnerability. 2. Vulnerability analysis, assessing the likelihood of exploitation. 3. Impact analysis, determining the potential business consequences. 4. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on likelihood and impact. 5. Risk treatment, developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies, patching, controls, etc. 6. Monitoring and review, continuously assessing the effectiveness of controls and re-evaluating risks. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory expectations for due diligence in cybersecurity. Question 9. Implementation of a new graphics acceleration feature within VMware Horizon 8. X is proposed to enhance user experience for graphics-intensive applications, which approach best balances performance gains with operational stability and resource management. Option A. Deploy the graphics acceleration feature to a pilot group of users, closely monitor performance metrics and user feedback, and then proceed with a phased rollout to the broader user base based on the pilot's success. Option B. Immediately enable the graphics acceleration feature for all users to maximize the potential performance benefits across the entire organization without delay. Option C. Implement the graphics acceleration feature using only the default configuration settings provided by the vendor, assuming these are optimized for all use cases. Option D. Focus solely on enabling the graphics acceleration feature for the most demanding applications, disregarding its potential impact on less graphics-intensive workloads. Correct answer is A. Deploy the graphics acceleration feature to a pilot group of users, closely monitor performance metrics and user feedback, and then proceed with a phased rollout to the broader user base based on the pilot's success. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure management, balancing performance optimization with resource allocation and cost efficiency. The professional must evaluate different approaches to implementing a new feature that impacts user experience and infrastructure load. The challenge lies in understanding the subtle differences between various optimization strategies and their implications for the VMware Horizon 8 X environment, specifically within the context of the 2V0-51-23 exam scope, which implies adherence to VMware's best practices and potentially industry-standard IT governance frameworks. The correct approach, focusing on a phased rollout and comprehensive monitoring, represents best professional practice because it aligns with established IT service management principles. This methodology minimizes risk by allowing for early detection of issues, validation of performance claims, and informed adjustments before widespread deployment. It ensures that the implementation adheres to the principle of least disruption and provides data-driven justification for resource utilization and potential cost implications, which are critical for demonstrating value and accountability. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate, broad deployment without adequate testing or monitoring fails to uphold professional responsibility. This can lead to widespread performance degradation, user dissatisfaction, and potential service outages, all of which are detrimental to the organization's operations and reputation. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of foresight and risk management, potentially violating internal IT policies and service-level agreements. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on a single, potentially unproven optimization technique without considering its broader impact on the Horizon environment or user experience is also professionally unsound. This can lead to unintended consequences, such as increased licensing costs, compatibility issues with other applications, or a negative impact on specific user groups. It neglects the holistic view required for effective VDI management. Finally, an approach that neglects to document the implementation process and its outcomes hinders future troubleshooting, knowledge transfer, and continuous improvement. This lack of documentation is a failure in professional diligence and can lead to repeated mistakes and inefficiencies. The professional decision-making process should involve a thorough understanding of the proposed feature's technical specifications, its potential impact on the existing Horizon 8 X infrastructure, and the organization's specific business requirements and risk tolerance. A structured approach involving planning, testing, phased deployment, and continuous monitoring, supported by clear documentation, is essential for successful and responsible implementation. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting desktop virtualization solutions like VMware Horizon 8 X to enhance flexibility and reduce operational costs. When evaluating different deployment strategies for a new Horizon 8 X environment, which approach best balances rapid deployment with long-term security, compliance, and operational stability. Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and security baseline review, followed by a phased pilot deployment with a representative user group and workload before a full-scale rollout. Option B. Immediately deploy the Horizon 8 X environment across the organization to capitalize on early adoption benefits, planning to address security and compliance issues as they arise. Option C. Prioritize the lowest cost deployment option recommended by the vendor, assuming it will meet all organizational needs without further validation. Option D. Implement the solution based solely on vendor best practice guides, without an independent assessment of the organization's specific security posture or compliance requirements. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and security baseline review, followed by a phased pilot deployment with a representative user group and workload before a full-scale rollout. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT infrastructure management where a new technology, VMware Horizon 8 X, is being introduced. The professional is tasked with evaluating different approaches to its deployment. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate benefits of rapid deployment with the long-term implications of security, compliance, and operational efficiency. Without a structured evaluation process, there's a risk of adopting a solution that is technically functional, but fails to meet the organization's broader strategic, regulatory, and security requirements, potentially leading to significant remediation costs, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance. The professional must consider not just the how, but the why, and the what-if of each deployment strategy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, risk-based evaluation that prioritizes security and compliance from the outset. This aligns with best practices for IT governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected within the professional context of managing enterprise-level virtualization solutions like VMware Horizon 8 X. A thorough assessment of the proposed deployment against established security baselines, organizational policies, and relevant regulatory frameworks, even if not explicitly stated in the question. The expectation of compliance is inherent in professional IT roles, ensures that the solution is not only functional but also secure and sustainable. This approach involves defining clear success criteria, conducting pilot testing with representative user groups and workloads, and establishing robust monitoring and rollback plans. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of unforeseen issues and ensures alignment with business objectives and risk appetite. Incorrect approaches analysis. Adopting a deploy and iterate strategy without prior comprehensive testing or security review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It prioritizes speed over security and compliance, creating a high risk of introducing vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches or service disruptions. This approach disregards the principle of due diligence expected of IT professionals. Implementing the solution solely based on vendor recommendations without independent validation or consideration of the specific organizational environment is also professionally unsound. While vendor guidance is valuable, it may not account for unique security configurations, existing infrastructure, or specific compliance obligations. This can lead to misconfigurations that compromise security or operational effectiveness, potentially violating internal policies or industry best practices. Focusing exclusively on cost reduction without a commensurate evaluation of security, performance, and compliance risks is another failure. While cost effectiveness is important, it should not come at the expense of fundamental security and operational integrity. This approach can lead to a technically deficient or insecure environment which ultimately incurs higher costs through remediation, incident response, and potential regulatory fines. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-aware approach to technology deployment. This involves 1. Understanding requirements. Clearly define business, technical, security, and compliance requirements. 2. Risk assessment. Identify potential risks associated with different deployment strategies. 3. Solution evaluation. Assess potential solutions against defined requirements and identified risks. 4. Phased implementation. Employ pilot programs and phased rollouts to validate the solution in a controlled manner. 5. Continuous monitoring. Implement robust monitoring and logging to detect and respond to issues promptly. 6. Documentation and review. Maintain thorough documentation and conduct post-implementation reviews to capture lessons learned. This systematic process ensures that technology decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and risk tolerance. Question 11. The control framework reveals a critical implementation challenge in a VMware Horizon 8 X environment where sensitive customer financial data is accessed by multiple user roles. The primary objective is to ensure that access to this data is strictly limited to authorized personnel and that all access is logged and auditable in accordance with the jurisdiction's data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while adhering to regulatory requirements? Option A. Grant all users with access to the Horizon environment administrative privileges to simplify troubleshooting and ensure they can access any required data. Option B. Deploy Horizon with default security settings and rely on user training to prevent unauthorized data access without implementing specific access controls or logging. Option C. Focus solely on securing the network perimeter of the Horizon infrastructure, assuming that once authenticated, users can be trusted with broad access to data. Option D. Implement granular role-based access controls (RBAC) within Horizon, mapping specific user groups to distinct application and data access privileges, and ensure comprehensive logging of all access events. Correct answer is D. Implement granular role-based access controls (RBAC) within Horizon, mapping specific user groups to distinct application and data access privileges, and ensure comprehensive logging of all access events. Explanation. The control framework reveals a critical implementation challenge related to securing sensitive user data within a VMware Horizon 8 X environment. The professional is tasked with ensuring that data access controls are not only technically sound, but also compliant with the stringent data privacy regulations applicable to the exam's jurisdiction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the operational needs of remote access with the imperative to protect confidential information, a common tension in modern IT deployments. The potential for data breaches or non-compliance carries significant legal and reputational risks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a layered security strategy that aligns with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, core tenets of data protection regulations. By implementing granular access controls at the application and data levels, and ensuring that these controls are regularly audited and updated, the professional demonstrates a proactive commitment to safeguarding sensitive information. This proactive stance is essential for meeting regulatory obligations, such as those requiring organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure the security of personal data. An incorrect approach that involves broadly granting administrative privileges to all users, even with the justification of simplifying management, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This violates the principle of least privilege, increasing the attack surface and the risk of unauthorized access or accidental data exposure. Such a broad grant of access would likely contravene data protection laws that mandate specific controls to prevent unauthorized processing or disclosure of personal data. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on network-level security without addressing application-level data access, is also professionally unacceptable. While network security is important, it does not adequately protect sensitive data once a user has authenticated into the Horizon environment. This oversight fails to implement the necessary technical measures to restrict access to specific data sets based on user roles and responsibilities, a requirement often stipulated by data privacy regulations. A third incorrect approach, neglecting to implement regular audits and reviews of access logs, is equally problematic. Without ongoing monitoring and validation, even well-intentioned access controls can become outdated or bypassed, leading to security vulnerabilities. This lack of oversight demonstrates a failure to ensure the ongoing effectiveness of security measures, which is a fundamental expectation under most data protection frameworks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, identifying sensitive data within the Horizon environment. This should be followed by a design phase that incorporates the principle of least privilege, implementing role-based access controls, RBAC, at the most granular level possible. Continuous monitoring, regular security audits, and a robust incident response plan are crucial components of maintaining a secure and compliant Horizon deployment. Professionals must always consider the regulatory landscape and ensure that technical solutions directly address compliance requirements. Question 12. The performance metrics show increased latency and intermittent connection issues for remote users accessing virtual desktops. The organization operates globally and must comply with strict data residency regulations in multiple jurisdictions, requiring that user data and control plane operations remain within specific geographical boundaries. The current Horizon 8X deployment consists of a single Horizon pod located in North America, which approach best addresses both the performance degradation and the critical data residency compliance requirements for a global deployment. Option A. Centralize all Horizon connection server instances in a single secure data center and deploy Unified Access Gateway (UAG) appliances in each target geographical region for user access. Option B. Deploy separate Horizon pods in each major geographical region where users are located, with each pod having its own connection server instances and Unified Access Gateway (UAG) appliances deployed within that region. Option C. Maintain the single Horizon pod in North America and implement robust VPN solutions for all remote users to connect to the Horizon environment. Option D. Deploy a single Horizon pod in North America and configure multiple Unified Access Gateway (UAG) appliances in various geographical regions, allowing users to connect through the nearest UAG. The correct answer is B. Deploy separate Horizon pods in each major geographical region where users are located, with each pod having its own connection server instances and Unified Access Gateway (UAG) appliances deployed within that region. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) environments, ensuring consistent and optimal user experience across a distributed workforce while adhering to strict data residency and security regulations. The challenge lies in balancing performance, cost, and compliance. The need to deploy Horizon pods in multiple geographical locations introduces complexity in management, network latency, and data sovereignty. Professionals must navigate these technical hurdles while ensuring that all deployments meet the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdictions in which they operate. This requires a deep understanding of both VMware Horizon architecture and the relevant legal and compliance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. Deploying Horizon pods in separate, geographically distinct regions, each with its own Unified Access Gateway (UAG) and connection server instances, directly addresses the data residency and compliance requirements. This approach ensures that user data and control plane operations remain within the defined geographical boundaries, satisfying regulatory mandates. By placing UAGs in proximity to users in each region, network latency is minimized, leading to a better user experience. This strategy represents best professional practice as it prioritizes compliance and user performance simultaneously, demonstrating a thorough understanding of both technical implementation and regulatory obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying a single Horizon pod with multiple UAGs in different regions fails to address data residency requirements. While it might improve user access latency, the core control plane and user data would still reside in a single geographical location, potentially violating regulations that mandate data to remain within specific borders. This approach is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it prioritizes performance over compliance. Centralizing all connection servers in one region and using UAGs in other regions for access introduces significant latency for users in remote locations. More critically, it creates a single point of failure for the control plane and potentially exposes sensitive user authentication and session data to risks associated with long-distance network transit, which could be a regulatory concern depending on the specific data protection laws. This approach is professionally deficient due to its disregard for user experience and potential security/compliance gaps. Implementing a single Horizon pod and relying solely on VPNs for remote users without geographically distributed UAGs will invariably lead to poor performance due to increased latency. Furthermore, It does not inherently solve data residency issues if the single pod is not located within the required jurisdiction for all users. This approach is technically suboptimal and may not meet compliance needs, making it professionally questionable. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying all applicable regulatory requirements, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or specific national data protection laws, and understanding their implications for data storage, processing, and user access. The technical solution must then be designed to meet these requirements without compromising essential operational aspects like performance and security. In this case, the primary driver is regulatory compliance, followed by user experience. The decision-making process should involve a thorough assessment of the geographical distribution of users, the data residency mandates for each region, and the capabilities of VMware Horizon to support such a distributed architecture. Question 13. Investigation of a new VMware Horizon 8 XVDI deployment for a financial services firm handling sensitive client information, where the primary objective is to ensure the solution meets the stringent data protection and client confidentiality requirements mandated by UK financial regulations and the CISI Code of Conduct, while also optimizing user performance. Which implementation strategy best balances these competing demands and upholds professional obligations? Option A. Delegate all security and compliance configuration to the IT infrastructure team, with the financial advisor providing only high-level oversight and accepting their technical recommendations without independent verification against regulatory requirements. Option B. Prioritize achieving the highest possible user performance metrics and seamless user experience, with security and compliance measures to be addressed as a secondary concern after initial deployment and user feedback. Option C. Implement a robust security framework within Horizon 8 X, including granular access controls, full disk encryption, and comprehensive audit logging, followed by rigorous testing and validation against specific FCA and CISI data handling mandates before a phased user rollout. Option D. Focus on implementing the most cost-effective Horizon 8 X configuration, utilizing default security settings and minimal audit logging to reduce initial expenditure, with the understanding that compliance can be retrofitted if issues arise. The correct answer is C. Implement a robust security framework within Horizon 8 X, including granular access controls, full disk encryption, and comprehensive audit logging, followed by rigorous testing and validation against specific FCA and CISI data handling mandates before a phased user rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. A financial advisor is tasked with implementing a new VMware Horizon 8 X virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) solution for a client that handles sensitive financial data. The challenge lies in ensuring that the VDI implementation adheres strictly to the VMware Horizon 8 X Professional 2V0-51. 23. Exam's regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, is assumed to align with the UK's Financial Conduct Authority FCA principles and the CISI Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment Code of Conduct. Specifically, the advisor must balance the technical requirements of Horizon 8 X with the stringent data protection, client confidentiality, and audit trail obligations mandated by these UK regulations. Failure to do so could result in significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The advisor must also consider the principle of treating customers fairly by ensuring the VDI solution does not negatively impact client service delivery or data accessibility. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment and a phased implementation strategy that prioritizes security and compliance from the outset. This includes designing the Horizon 8 X environment with robust access controls, encryption for data at rest and in transit, and detailed logging mechanisms that capture all user activity. The implementation should be validated against specific FCA and CISI requirements for data handling and record keeping. This aligns with the FCA's principles for businesses e.g. Principle 2, Skill, Care, and Diligence. Principle 7, Communications with Clients. Principle 11, Relations with Regulators and the CISI Code of Conduct e.g. Integrity, Objectivity, Competence, Client Interest. A thorough testing and validation phase, including user acceptance testing, UAT, with a focus on security and data integrity, is crucial before full deployment. This demonstrates a commitment to professional standards and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that focuses solely on technical performance and user experience without explicit consideration for data security and regulatory compliance is professionally unacceptable. This would violate FCA Principle 2, Skill, Care, and Diligence, and Principle 7, Communications with Clients, as it fails to adequately protect client data and could lead to breaches of confidentiality. It also contravenes the SISI Code of Conduct regarding acting in the client's best interest. An approach that delegates all security and compliance aspects to the IT department, without the financial advisor's direct oversight and validation, is also flawed. While IT has technical expertise, the ultimate responsibility for ensuring the VDI solution meets regulatory obligations rests with the advisor. This failure to actively manage and verify compliance could be seen as a breach of professional duty and potentially violate FCA Principle 2. An approach that prioritizes cost saving by implementing a minimal security configuration or skipping critical audit logging features would be a direct contravention of FCA and SISI requirements. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for client data protection, potentially leading to severe regulatory sanctions and a breach of the SISI Code of Conduct regarding integrity and client interest. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach, integrating regulatory and ethical considerations into every stage of the VDI implementation lifecycle. This involves proactive identification of compliance requirements, thorough planning, meticulous execution, and continuous monitoring. Decision-making should be guided by the principles of client best interest, data security, confidentiality, and regulatory adherence, ensuring that technical solutions serve these fundamental objectives. Question 14. What factors determine the most effective strategy for deploying a new business-critical application within a VMware Horizon 8X environment to ensure both user accessibility and robust security compliance? Option A. Proceeding with the deployment without a pilot phase, relying solely on pre-deployment testing in a lab environment. Option B. Deploying the application to all users simultaneously to maximize immediate access and minimize administrative overhead. Option C. Prioritizing user convenience by disabling certain security features during the initial rollout to expedite access. Option D. Implementing a phased rollout starting with a pilot user group, followed by iterative adjustments based on feedback and performance metrics before a full deployment. The correct answer is D. Implementing a phased rollout starting with a pilot user group, followed by iterative adjustments based on feedback and performance metrics before a full deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in VMware Horizon 8X environments, ensuring consistent and secure application delivery across diverse user groups and devices. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment and user accessibility with the stringent requirements for data security, compliance, and operational efficiency. Missteps in this area can lead to security vulnerabilities, compliance violations, and a degraded user experience, all of which have significant business implications. The correct approach emphasizes a phased rollout strategy, beginning with a pilot group. This methodology is best professional practice because it allows for thorough testing and validation of the application delivery mechanism, including performance, security controls, and user acceptance, in a controlled environment before a broader deployment. This aligns with general IT best practices for change management and risk mitigation. From a regulatory perspective, while the 2V0-5123 exam syllabus does not specify a particular jurisdiction's regulations, best practices in IT security and data handling, which are implicitly tested, often require a risk-based approach to deployment. A pilot phase allows for the identification and remediation of potential compliance gaps before they impact a larger user base, thereby demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive data and ensuring adherence to any applicable data privacy or security standards. An incorrect approach would be to deploy the application to all users simultaneously without prior testing. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses essential risk assessment and validation steps. It increases the likelihood of introducing unforeseen security vulnerabilities or compliance issues that could expose sensitive data or lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize user convenience over security configurations during the initial deployment. This is professionally unacceptable as it directly compromises the security posture of the Horizon environment and any applications delivered through it. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the principle of security by design and could lead to breaches, data loss, and reputational damage, all of which carry regulatory consequences. Finally, neglecting to document the deployment process and user feedback from the pilot phase is also professionally unsound. This oversight hinders future troubleshooting, auditing, and continuous improvement efforts, and can be seen as a failure in maintaining proper operational records, which is often a requirement for compliance and auditability. The professional reasoning process for such a situation should involve a thorough risk assessment, followed by a phased implementation plan that includes a pilot group. Key considerations should be the sensitivity of the application and data, the diversity of the user base and their devices, and the existing security and compliance controls within the organization. Documenting all steps, configurations, and feedback is crucial for accountability and continuous improvement. Question 15. When evaluating a critical business request for immediate access to a production VMware Horizon environment by a third-party vendor requiring troubleshooting, and the standard access request process involves a multi-day approval cycle, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the VMware Horizon administrator? Option A. Grant the vendor temporary, audited administrative access to the specific components required for troubleshooting, after obtaining verbal approval from the direct manager and ensuring all access is logged and time-bound. Option B. Refuse the vendor any access until the full, formal approval process is completed, regardless of the business impact of the delay. Option C. Attempt to find a workaround or exploit a known vulnerability to grant the vendor the necessary access without going through the formal approval process. Option D. Immediately grant the vendor full administrative access to the entire Horizon environment to expedite the troubleshooting process, assuming their intent is legitimate. The correct answer is A. Grant the vendor temporary, audited administrative access to the specific components required for troubleshooting, after obtaining verbal approval from the direct manager and ensuring all access is logged and time-bound. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it forces a VMware Horizon administrator to balance the immediate need for system access with the potential for unauthorized data exfiltration and the ethical obligation to protect sensitive information. The administrator is privy to information that, if misused, could have significant financial and reputational consequences for the organization. The core of the dilemma lies in the conflict between a direct, albeit potentially risky, solution and a more secure, but time-consuming process. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data security and adheres to established organizational policies and ethical guidelines for handling sensitive information. By involving the security team and following the documented incident response procedure, the administrator ensures that any access granted is monitored, logged, and authorized, thereby mitigating the risk of unauthorized access or data compromise. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and the requirement for due diligence in managing access to critical systems. An incorrect approach that involves granting immediate access without proper authorization or logging fails to uphold the principle of least privilege and bypasses established security protocols. This creates a significant security vulnerability, potentially leading to unauthorized access, data breaches, and non-compliance with data protection regulations. Such an action could be construed as negligence and a breach of professional duty. Another incorrect approach, such as refusing access entirely without exploring secure alternatives or escalating the issue, demonstrates a lack of problem-solving and a failure to support legitimate business needs. Security is paramount. An overly rigid stance can hinder operations and create friction between IT and other departments. This approach neglects the responsibility to find a secure and functional solution. A third incorrect approach, such as attempting to circumvent security controls to gain access, is a direct violation of ethical conduct and professional responsibility. This action not only compromises the integrity of the system, but also exposes the administrator to severe disciplinary action and legal repercussions. It demonstrates a disregard for established security policies and a lack of trustworthiness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of organizational policies, a commitment to ethical conduct, and a structured approach to problem solving. When faced with a conflict between immediate needs and security, professionals should 1. Assess the urgency and potential impact of the request. 2. Consult relevant policies and procedures. 3. Escalate the issue to the appropriate stakeholders, e.g., security team, management if necessary. 4. Document all actions and decisions. 5. Prioritize security and compliance while seeking to enable legitimate business functions through secure means. Question 16. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical business application hosted on a VMware Horizon 8 X desktop is experiencing intermittent performance issues due to a perceived network latency. The IT administrator has identified a potential workaround involving a minor adjustment to the virtual machine's network adapter settings, which is not a standard configuration and deviates from the documented baseline. The administrator is aware that this change is not covered by existing approved change requests and would typically require a formal exception and approval process. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IT administrator? Option A. Advise the business users to adjust their usage patterns to mitigate the performance impact and escalate the issue to the network team for further investigation without making any immediate changes to the virtual machine. Option B. Implement the network adapter setting adjustment immediately to restore application performance and then submit a retrospective change request to document the modification. Option C. Document the proposed network adapter setting adjustment and its potential benefits, then submit a formal change request for review and approval before implementing the change. Option D. Proceed with the network adapter setting adjustment as a temporary fix and inform the relevant stakeholders about the change after it has been implemented. The correct answer is B. Implement the network adapter setting adjustment immediately to restore application performance, and then submit a retrospective change request to document the modification. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IT environments where a seemingly minor deviation from policy could have significant security and compliance implications. The challenge lies in balancing operational efficiency with the stringent security and data privacy requirements mandated by VMware Horizon 8, X professional best practices, and any applicable regulatory frameworks, which, for this exam, are assumed to be aligned with general IT security and data protection principles, without specifying a particular jurisdiction to maintain exam focus. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established security protocols and the principle of least privilege. By documenting the exception and seeking formal approval through the designated change management process, the administrator upholds the integrity of the security posture. This aligns with the core tenets of responsible IT management, ensuring that any deviation is understood, approved, and its potential impact is mitigated. This proactive and documented approach is crucial for auditability and maintaining compliance with security standards. An incorrect approach that bypasses the formal change control process, even for a seemingly minor issue, introduces significant risk. It undermines the established security policies, creating a precedent for future noncompliance. This can lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, and a failure to meet audit requirements. Such actions are ethically questionable as they disregard established procedures designed to protect the organization's assets and data. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing a workaround without proper authorization or documentation is equally problematic. While it might temporarily resolve the immediate operational issue, it leaves the system in a state that is not officially sanctioned, potentially introducing vulnerabilities that are unknown or unaddressed. This lack of transparency and control is a direct contravention of good security practices and can lead to unforeseen consequences. Finally, an approach that involves ignoring the issue and hoping it resolves itself is a dereliction of duty. It fails to address a known risk, leaving the system and its users exposed. This passive stance is unprofessional and can have severe repercussions if the unaddressed issue leads to a security incident. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the immediate operational need. 2. Identifying the relevant security policies and compliance requirements. 3. Assessing the risks associated with any deviation from policy. 4. Following the established change management and exception handling procedures. 5. Documenting all actions and seeking appropriate approvals. 6. Prioritizing security and compliance over expediency. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual file access and application usage by a specific user that deviates significantly from their typical behavior, raising a potential security concern. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Ignore the alert, assuming it is a false positive due to the complexity of user behavior in a virtual environment. Option B. Directly confront the user and demand an explanation for their recent activity. Option C. Immediately escalate the alert to the security team and initiate disciplinary proceedings against the user. Option D. Review system logs and user activity reports for additional context and corroborating evidence before taking any further action. The correct answer is D. Review system logs and user activity reports for additional context and corroborating evidence before taking any further action. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and user trust within a virtual desktop infrastructure. The monitoring system has detected unusual activity that could indicate either legitimate, albeit unconventional, user behavior or a security breach. The challenge lies in balancing the need for security and operational oversight with the expectation of user privacy and the potential for misinterpretation of data. Acting too aggressively without proper investigation could lead to false accusations and damage employee morale, while inaction could expose the organization to significant security risks. The professional must navigate this ambiguity with a commitment to fairness and due process. Correct approach analysis. The most appropriate approach involves a multi-step process that prioritizes investigation and due diligence before any punitive or corrective action is taken. This aligns with principles of fairness and due process, which are implicitly expected in professional IT environments and are often underpinned by organizational policies and, in some jurisdictions, data protection regulations. The correct approach emphasizes gathering more context, verifying the nature of the activity, and consulting relevant policies before making a judgment. This upholds user privacy by avoiding premature assumptions and ensures that any subsequent actions are based on concrete evidence, thereby maintaining trust and adhering to ethical standards of responsible data handling. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately escalating the issue to security and initiating disciplinary action based solely on the raw monitoring data. This fails to account for potential legitimate explanations for the observed activity and violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty. It represents a significant ethical failure by potentially penalizing an employee without a thorough investigation and could lead to legal repercussions if it contravenes data privacy laws that require evidence of wrongdoing before action is taken. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the alert entirely, assuming it is a false positive or insignificant. This demonstrates a dereliction of duty regarding security oversight. While the activity might be benign, failing to investigate a potential anomaly leaves the organization vulnerable to actual security threats. Ethically, IT professionals have a responsibility to maintain the integrity and security of the systems they manage, and ignoring alerts, even potentially false ones, is a breach of that responsibility. A third incorrect approach is to directly confront the user and demand an explanation without first gathering additional information or consulting with appropriate stakeholders. This can be perceived as accusatory and may put the user on the defensive, hindering a truthful explanation. It also bypasses established protocols for incident investigation, which often involve a structured approach to ensure fairness and accuracy. This method risks alienating the user and could lead to a situation where the true nature of the activity is obscured due to the confrontational nature of the initial interaction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. This typically involves 1. Alert triage, initial assessment of the alert's severity and potential impact. 2. Information gathering, collecting more context, logs, and user activity details. 3. Analysis, correlating data to understand the root cause. 4. Verification, confirming whether the activity is malicious, policy-violating, or benign. 5. Action, implementing appropriate remediation or disciplinary steps based on verified findings and organizational policy. 6. Documentation, recording all steps taken and decisions made. This systematic process ensures that actions are justified, fair, and compliant with ethical and regulatory expectations. Question 18. System analysis indicates that users are reporting intermittent slowdowns and unresponsiveness within their VMware Horizon 8 X virtual desktops, particularly during peak usage hours. The IT team suspects a performance issue, but is unsure of the most effective and compliant method to diagnose and resolve it. Which of the following approaches represents the most professional and effective method for addressing these performance concerns within the VMware Horizon 8 X environment? Option A. Focus solely on network latency troubleshooting, assuming that all performance issues are network-related, and implement network-wide CO-S policies without investigating the VDI infrastructure itself. Option B. Immediately increase the CPU and RAM allocation for all virtual desktops and virtual desktop pools to ensure sufficient resources are available for all users, regardless of current utilization. Option C. Disable adaptive transport features in Blast Extreme and reduce the frequency of instant clone refreshes to minimize resource overhead and improve perceived responsiveness. Option D. Systematically analyze performance metrics from Horizon Console, vCenter Server, and underlying storage and network infrastructure to identify specific bottlenecks and resource contention, correlating these findings with user-reported issues before implementing any changes. The correct answer is D. Systematically analyze performance metrics from Horizon Console, vCenter Server, and underlying storage and network infrastructure to identify specific bottlenecks and resource contention, correlating these findings with user-reported issues before implementing any changes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI environments, balancing performance optimization with resource utilization and cost efficiency. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of perceived performance degradation without resorting to overly aggressive or potentially disruptive changes. A hasty or misdiagnosed approach can lead to increased operational costs, user dissatisfaction, and potential non-compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs, if performance targets are not met. The professional must consider the interconnectedness of various Horizon components and underlying infrastructure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation. This begins with establishing baseline performance metrics and then correlating user-reported issues with specific events or resource utilization patterns within the Horizon environment. Utilizing VMware's built-in monitoring tools, e.g., Horizon Console, vCenter Server performance charts, and potentially third-party monitoring solutions allows for granular analysis of CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network latency at the VM host and storage levels. Identifying specific bottlenecks, such as insufficient resources on instant clones, high latency in storage I/O for persistent desktops, or network congestion affecting protocol performance, is crucial. This methodical approach ensures that optimizations are targeted, effective, and do not introduce new problems. It aligns with best practices for IT service management, emphasizing proactive problem-solving and continuous improvement. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately increase the allocated resources, CPU, RAM, for all virtual desktops without a clear understanding of the bottleneck. This is a brute force method that leads to over-provisioning, increased licensing costs, if applicable, higher power consumption, and potentially wasted compute resources. It fails to address the underlying cause and can mask more fundamental issues. Another incorrect approach is to indiscriminately disable or reduce the frequency of Horizon's built-in optimization features, such as Blast Extreme's adaptive transport or the frequency of desktop refresh cycles for instant clones. While these features consume resources, they are designed to improve user experience and manageability. Disabling them without understanding their impact or identifying specific performance issues they might be exacerbating is counterproductive and can lead to a degraded user experience or increased administrative overhead. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the network layer without considering the VDI infrastructure itself. While network latency can impact performance, issues with storage I/O, insufficient compute on hosts, or inefficient VM configurations can also manifest as network-related performance problems. A holistic view is essential. Professional reasoning, professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves 1. Defining the problem clearly, including user impact and performance metrics. 2. Gathering data through comprehensive monitoring of the Horizon environment and underlying infrastructure. 3. Analyzing the data to identify root causes and bottlenecks. 4. Developing targeted solutions based on the analysis. 5. Implementing solutions in a controlled manner, ideally in a test environment or during off-peak hours. 6. Verifying the effectiveness of the solutions and monitoring for unintended consequences. 7. Documenting the process and outcomes for future reference and continuous improvement. This systematic approach ensures that optimizations are effective, cost-efficient, and compliant with operational objectives. Question 19. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the process for onboarding new users to the VMware Horizon 8 X environment is perceived as slow and cumbersome, impacting productivity. To address this, what is the most effective approach to optimize the user onboarding process while ensuring adherence to the 2V0-510-23 exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Prioritize the onboarding requests of the most vocal department heads, implementing their suggested changes directly to appease their concerns, even if these changes have not been vetted for broader impact. Option B. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, starting with establishing clear metrics for current onboarding times and success rates, analyzing the root causes of delays, and then developing and testing targeted improvements before a full rollout. Option C. Immediately deploy a new, automated onboarding script that has been developed based on anecdotal evidence of common delays, without first measuring current performance or testing the script extensively. Option D. Focus solely on reducing the number of steps in the existing onboarding workflow, assuming that fewer steps will inherently lead to a faster and more efficient process. Correct answer is B. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, starting with establishing clear metrics for current onboarding times and success rates, analyzing the root causes of delays, and then developing and testing targeted improvements before a full rollout. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT service delivery, balancing the desire for rapid feature deployment with the need for robust, compliant, and efficient operational processes. The professional challenge lies in interpreting stakeholder feedback, which often expresses immediate needs, and translating it into actionable, long-term strategic improvements that align with VMware Horizon 8 X best practices and any applicable regulatory frameworks relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. The requirement to adhere strictly to the 2V0-51-23 VMware Horizon 8 X Professional Exams Regulatory Framework means that any proposed solution must be evaluated against its ability to maintain security, availability, and auditability within that specific context. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven methodology for process optimization. By first establishing clear metrics and baselines, professionals can objectively measure the impact of any changes. This aligns with principles of ITIL Information Technology Infrastructure Library and general IT governance, which emphasize continuous improvement through measurement and analysis. In the context of VMware Horizon 8 X, this means ensuring that optimization efforts do not inadvertently compromise security configurations, user experience, or licensing compliance, all of which are critical for a professional deployment. Adhering to the exam's specific regulatory framework would necessitate that any optimization strategy demonstrably supports or enhances compliance with those implicit or explicit requirements. Each incorrect approach represents specific regulatory or ethical failures. Implementing changes without a baseline measurement is a failure of due diligence and risk management. It's impossible to prove improvement or identify unintended negative consequences, which could lead to security vulnerabilities or performance degradation, potentially violating compliance mandates. Prioritizing only the most vocal stakeholders without broader analysis risks creating solutions that benefit a few at the expense of the many, or worse, introduce systemic issues. This can be seen as a failure of equitable service delivery and potentially a breach of service-level agreements if performance for other user groups degrades. Focusing solely on cost reduction without considering impact on performance or security is a direct contravention of best practices for maintaining a stable and secure virtual desktop infrastructure and could lead to non-compliance with operational security standards. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the feedback. Clearly define the nature and scope of stakeholder concerns. 2. Define objectives. Translate feedback into measurable goals for process improvement. 3. Establish baselines. Collect current performance data against these objectives. 4. Analyze root causes. Investigate why current processes are not meeting expectations. 5. Propose solutions. Develop potential optimization strategies, considering technical feasibility, cost, and compliance. 6. Pilot and test. Implement changes in a controlled environment and measure their impact against baselines. 7. Deploy and monitor. Roll out successful changes and continuously monitor performance and compliance. 8. Iterate, repeat the process for ongoing improvement. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and improvements are demonstrable and sustainable, all while adhering to the specific requirements of the VMware Horizon 8 X environment and its governing regulations. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that end users are experiencing intermittent delays and application unresponsiveness within the VMware Horizon 8 X environment, impacting productivity. The IT team is tasked with optimizing processes to improve performance and resource utilization. Which of the following strategies best addresses this challenge? Option A. Increase the allocated RAM and CPU for all virtual desktops to ensure ample resources are available for every user, without further investigation into specific resource demands. Option B. Proactively disable all non-essential services on the golden image to minimize resource overhead, regardless of their potential impact on user applications. Option C. Deploy a broad network-wide bandwidth throttling policy to manage traffic, without analyzing individual user traffic patterns or application requirements. Option D. Implement application layering to consolidate common applications and reduce the size and complexity of golden images, coupled with a thorough analysis of user session data to identify and tune resource-intensive applications. The correct answer is D. Implement application layering to consolidate common applications and reduce the size and complexity of golden images, coupled with a thorough analysis of user session data to identify and tune resource-intensive applications. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI environments, balancing user experience with resource utilization. In a VMware Horizon 8 X environment, optimizing processes directly impacts the efficiency of resource allocation, the responsiveness of virtual desktops, and ultimately, the cost-effectiveness of the deployment. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing optimizations that yield tangible benefits without negatively affecting end users or introducing security vulnerabilities. This requires a deep understanding of Horizon's architecture, the underlying infrastructure, and the specific workloads of the users. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven methodology for process optimization. This means leveraging Horizon's built-in monitoring tools and potentially third-party solutions to gather performance metrics. Analyzing these metrics allows for the identification of bottlenecks, such as inefficient application behavior, suboptimal VM configurations, or network latency. Implementing targeted optimizations, like application layering, profile management tuning, or resource pool adjustments based on this data, represents best professional practice. This data-driven approach ensures that optimizations are effective, measurable, and aligned with business objectives, minimizing risk and maximizing return on investment. It also aligns with the principle of responsible IT resource management, ensuring that resources are used efficiently and effectively. Incorrect approaches often stem from a lack of systematic analysis or a reliance on anecdotal evidence. Implementing broad, untested changes without understanding their impact can lead to unintended consequences. For example, indiscriminately disabling services on golden images might reduce resource consumption but could break critical application functionality, leading to user complaints and increased support overhead. Similarly, over-provisioning resources based on perceived needs rather than actual usage is wasteful and increases operational costs, failing to meet the efficiency goals of process optimization. Another failure would be to implement optimizations without considering the security implications. For instance, removing security agents or hardening configurations too aggressively without proper testing could expose the environment to threats, violating fundamental security principles and potentially regulatory compliance requirements related to data protection. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased approach. First, establish baseline performance metrics. Second, identify specific areas for optimization based on data. Third, plan and test proposed changes in a controlled environment. Fourth, implement changes incrementally and monitor their impact closely. And finally, document all changes and their outcomes. This iterative process ensures that optimizations are effective, safe, and contribute to the overall health and efficiency of the Horizon environment.